My name is William Donovan, and for 30 years, people have mistaken me for an ordinary banker. I drive an old Buick, wear suits that went out of style a decade ago, and live in a quiet neighborhood where nobody talks about stock portfolios or country clubs. That's exactly how I like it. When my son, Nathan, brought home his fiancée, Ava Whitmore, I could tell from her first glance at our modest home that she thought she was marrying beneath her. Her smile was polished, practiced the kind of smile that measures a person's worth by the brand of their shoes. Still, for Nathan's sake, I stayed polite. That illusion shattered the night of their engagement party, when Ava raised her champagne glass and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Pay $100,000, or there's no wedding." The room laughed. They thought I was powerless, just another aging father desperate to see his son married into money. I simply smiled, reached for my phone, and logged into the Donovan financial mainframe. Ava had no idea that her personal accounts, her trust fund, and her family's entire credit line lived inside my bank. 5 minutes later, her balance read, $0. The first time I met Ava Whitmore, she stepped out of a pearl-white Mercedes like she was arriving at a movie premiere. The car door opened, and before my son even got out, her perfume drifted across the driveway, something expensive, sharp, and just a little bit cold. She looked around our quiet cul-de-sac in Cranston, Rhode Island, her manicured hand shielding her eyes as if the modest houses might glare back at her. "This is it?" she asked softly, but not softly enough. Nathan smiled, trying to smooth things over. "Yeah, this is home. Dad's been here forever." I stepped forward, wiping my hands on my jeans. "You must be Ava. Welcome." She hesitated before shaking my hand, as if physical contact might smudge her manicure. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Donovan. Nathan's told me you work at a bank?" I nodded. "That's right. Been there most of my life." "Which one?" she pressed. "Donovan Financial." Her perfectly arched eyebrow lifted. "Oh, how funny, it has your name on it." "Coincidence," I said with a grin. Nathan laughed, assuming I was joking, and Ava smiled politely, already scanning the house behind me. I could almost hear her mental inventory: small porch, second-hand furniture visible through the window, no marble foyer. Inside, she perched on the edge of the sofa like she was afraid it might stain her dress. My old Labrador, Duke, wagged his tail and dropped a slobbery tennis ball at her feet. She flinched. "Oh, he's friendly," I said. "I'm sure he is," she replied, inching her designer heels away. Nathan tried to fill the silence. "Dad, Ava's working in marketing for a luxury brand in Boston. She's really ambitious." "I can see that," I said, offering coffee. "Do you have almond milk?" she asked. "Whole milk or black?" I said with a smile. She declined. The visit lasted an hour, but it felt longer. Ava asked about Nathan's childhood, our family, and casually me income. "It must be challenging, running a small branch," she said, her tone somewhere between curiosity and condescension. I could have told her I wasn't a branch manager, that the entire Donovan Financial Group, with its 87 branches and billions in managed assets, reported to my desk. But humility is more revealing than bragging. When people think you're small, they show you who they really are. Before leaving, Ava complimented the family photos on the wall, pictures of Nathan fishing with me, his late mother smiling beside him at his college graduation. Her eyes lingered on one in particular, my wife standing in front of the very first Donovan Financial office, a small brick building with a faded sign. "She looks humble," Ava said. "She was," I replied quietly. "That's what made her extraordinary." Ava didn't respond. She glanced at her diamond bracelet instead. When they left, I stood on the porch watching the Mercedes disappear down the street. Duke nudged my hand, sensing my unease. "You saw it too, didn't you, boy?" I muttered. That look she gave this place. Nathan called later that night, bubbling with excitement. "Dad, thanks for being nice to her. She was nervous about meeting you. I could tell, I said. She seems strong-willed. She is, he agreed, oblivious to what that meant. But she loves me. She just wants the wedding to be special. Special can mean a lot of things, son. He laughed. Don't worry, it's not going to be one of those over-the-top events. We'll keep it simple. I smiled, though something in my gut told me simplicity wasn't in Ava's vocabulary. Over the next few weeks, subtle signs piled up. Nathan mentioned Ava wanted them to upgrade his car before the wedding. Then came the talk about hiring a personal stylist for engagement photos. When he told me her family planned to host the rehearsal dinner at the Seaport Yacht Club, I finally asked, who's paying for all that? He hesitated. Her parents are covering most of it. She said it's just the way things are done in her circle. Her circle. The words landed heavy. I'd built an empire out of loaning money to people like her circle families who valued appearance over stability, whose wealth was leveraged, not earned. But Nathan was happy, and I wasn't about to crush that. Every father wants to believe his child knows what love is. Still, as I watched him drift into her glittering orbit, I felt the same uneasy calm I always did before a market crash. The numbers might look impressive, but beneath the shine, something was rotten. And soon enough, the bill would come due. It was a Friday evening when I first realized how far Ava Whitmore would go to get what she wanted. Nathan had invited me to dinner at the Ocean View Manor, a glass-walled restaurant overlooking Narragansett Bay, the kind of place where the water sparkles, the wine costs as much as rent, and everyone pretends they're not checking each other's designer labels. Ava chose the location, of course. When I arrived, she was already seated at a corner table, scrolling through her phone while a waiter hovered nearby, refilling a glass of something that definitely wasn't cheap. Nathan looked nervous. "Dad, thanks for coming," he said. Ava wanted to talk wedding plans. Plans, I repeated. Not demands, I hope. Ava laughed lightly, though her eyes didn't. "Oh, Mr. Donovan, you're funny. No demands. Just practical discussions." I ordered black coffee. She wrinkled her nose slightly, as though caffeine without foam or flavoring were a personal failure. "So," she began, tapping her manicured nails against the menu, "Nathan and I have found the perfect venue, the Cliffside Pavilion in Newport. It's exclusive, elegant, and honestly, it's what our families deserve." "Our families?" I asked. "Of course," she said, flashing her engagement ring. "This is a union of equals, right?" "Always," I said. "What's the cost?" She hesitated, waiting for Nathan to answer, but he stayed quiet. "Well," she said, "with catering, live music, decor, and guest accommodations, the total is around $600,000. I nearly spilled my coffee. $600,000, I repeated. "It's not as bad as it sounds," she said quickly. "My family will handle most of it. We only need your contribution for the deposit, about $100,000. Nathan shifted uncomfortably. "Ava." She touched his hand gently, as if silencing a child. "Sweetheart, we've talked about this. Your father can manage it." Then she turned to me, her smile sharp and gleaming. "I mean, you've been at that bank for 30 years? Surely $100,000 isn't a stretch for someone in finance." I leaned back, watching her posture confident, rehearsed. "And if I say no?" Her tone didn't change. "Then we'll have to delay the wedding. The pavilion won't hold the date without the deposit." It was a practiced ultimatum, dressed in charm. Nathan looked mortified. "Dad, you don't have to." But she cut him off again, her voice silk over steel. "Nathan, this isn't about money. It's about presentation. My family's reputation is on the line, too." "Your family's reputation," I echoed quietly. She smiled, mistaking patience for submission. "Exactly. And, of course, it reflects on you as well." I mean, people will want to know what kind of family Nathan comes from. Don't you want the Donovans to be represented with the dignity they deserve? There it was, the insult wrapped in a compliment. The assumption that dignity had a price tag. Nathan opened his mouth to protest again, but I raised a hand. It's fine, son. I looked at Ava. You'll have your answer soon. She beamed. Wonderful. The venue needs the payment by Monday. When the waiter came to clear the plates, I noticed Ava's credit card platinum, embossed with her initials. She placed it on the tray like an offering. It's on me, she said. A thank you for considering. I smiled. That's generous. Oh, it's nothing, she said with a small shrug. My father takes care of the bills. I'm just authorized to spend. Authorized to spend. Not to earn. Not to build. I watched her sign the check, her pen flashing like a blade, and thought, you've never had to worry about what happens when the money runs out, have you? When we left the restaurant, Nathan walked me to my car. His shoulders sagged. Dad, I'm sorry about tonight. She just wants things a certain way. Lavish? He laughed weakly. Yeah. I know it's a lot to ask, but maybe I can help cover part of it. I've got savings. I stopped him. Son, if a marriage starts with a price tag, it's not a partnership. It's a transaction. He looked torn, but love makes even smart men blind. She's not a bad person, he said quietly. She just grew up different. Different isn't the problem, I said. Entitled is. That night, after they drove off, I sat in my office at home, the city lights flickering through the blinds. I logged into our secure network and opened the client master database of Donovan Financial Group. I typed Whitmore. The results filled the screen. Whitmore Holdings, multiple business credit lines. Charles and Margaret Whitmore, mortgage, yacht financing, art loan. Ava Whitmore, personal checking, luxury trust account, discretionary fund, all under Donovan Financial Management. I scrolled, slow and deliberate, like flipping through the chapters of a book I already knew the ending to. Balance sheets don't lie, but people do. Before logging off, I made one note to myself. Meeting, review Whitmore accounts. Potential character clause violations. The date I wrote beside it was Monday, the same deadline Ava had given me for her $100,000 demand. She wanted an answer by then. And she was going to get one, just not the kind she expected. That night, long after Nathan and Ava had gone home, I stayed in my study with a single lamp glowing beside the leather-bound ledger on my desk. The air smelled faintly of ink, paper, and the faint sweetness of bourbon I hadn't touched. On my computer screen, the Donovan Financial Group network hummed quietly, a living map of wealth, loans, accounts, and secrets. I've always believed information is the purest form of power. The wealthy flaunt cars, homes, and jewelry. The wise collect data. At 10:43 p.m., I typed the words, Whitmore Holdings, into the client database. The results blinked to life, and they told a story far more revealing than any engagement dinner could. Charles Whitmore, Ava's father, had 3 active business loans with my bank. 2 of them were already under review due to missed interest payments. A mortgage on their seaside estate in Newport sat at $3.6 million, tied up in both the family trust and the corporate credit line. Ava Whitmore herself had 3 personal accounts. A trust fund worth $820,000. A personal checking account averaging about $18,000 in monthly withdrawals. A luxury expense card, linked to the family business as a public relations budget. And every single one of those accounts carried the same name in the fine print, Donovan Financial Group. My bank. My rules. I scrolled further, opening the compliance reports that automatically flag high-risk or ethically questionable transactions. Most were small designer boutiques, travel agencies, high-end salons. But one pattern caught my attention, a series of transfers to a private jewelry dealer in Manhattan. The amounts were just under $10,000 each, carefully split to avoid federal reporting thresholds. Smarter than she looks, I thought. Or at least coached by someone who knows the system. I kept reading until a different report stopped me cold. A note from our compliance department dated just last quarter. Recommendation: monitor Whitmore Holdings accounts for potential violation of Character Clause 9b, reputational risk and conduct inconsistent with community values. That clause wasn't just boilerplate. It was my signature addition to every major loan agreement our bank issued. It gave me discretionary authority to review, suspend, or even terminate accounts if the client's actions publicly contradicted the ethical standards outlined in the contract. I'd written that clause years ago, after watching too many arrogant men sneer at working-class clients while cashing checks written on the backs of those same people. It was a way to remind the rich that respect is part of their credit history. Now, it was about to become my scalpel. At 11:15, I called Isabella, my niece and vice president of operations. She answered on the second ring, her voice alert even at that hour. "Uncle Will? Everything okay?" "I need a discreet compliance review," I said. "Family name, Whitmore. Sub-accounts included." There was a pause. "I thought you said we were staying out of personal cases." "This one's personal in the right way." She hesitated again, but Isabella knew better than to question the tone I was using. "Understood. You want the full audit?" "Yes. All assets, all obligations, and note any pending legal vulnerabilities." And I leaned back, staring at Ava's digital signature on the screen, flag any behavioral or reputational red marks. "Character clauses?" "Exactly." She exhaled. "By Monday morning? Before breakfast?" "Got it." I ended the call and sat in silence for a long time, listening to the ticking clock on the wall. Nathan still believed love was enough. He thought the woman he loved was simply ambitious, not predatory. But I'd spent my entire career studying what ambition looks like when it turns into greed. The signs were always the same: entitlement wrapped in charm, control disguised as care, and a deep fear of being ordinary. Ava Whitmore wasn't in love with my son. She was in love with the idea of merging her name with a stable legacy. At midnight, I opened my drawer and pulled out an old photograph, my wife, Evelyn, standing in front of our first branch office. The sign behind her read, "Building trust, not just wealth." She believed in that motto more than I ever did. When she passed away 10 years ago, I promised I'd honor it even if it meant reminding people like the Whitmores what the word trust truly meant. By 2 a.m., the preliminary audit was already trickling in. Isabella was efficient, she always had been. A message flashed on my screen. Early findings: Whitmore Holdings credit exposure exceeds $4.8 million. Collateral overstated. Mortgage due for reevaluation. Trust accounts contain red flags related to public image management. Recommend board notice. That last line made me smile faintly. Public image management, a polite way of saying they were more concerned about appearances than integrity. I shut down my computer, feeling the quiet satisfaction that comes when the pieces start to fall into place. Ava had given me a deadline: Monday morning. By then, I'd have everything I needed. But this wasn't just about revenge or humiliation. It was about principle. In my world, people like Ava measure worth in dollars. In mine, worth is measured by what you do when someone mistakes you for less than you are. She thought I was a man who couldn't afford her price. By Monday, she would learn that I was the man who said it. By Sunday afternoon, two things had become painfully clear: my son Nathan was in love, and Ava Whitmore was in control. The weekend had been a parade of phone calls, texts, and urgent updates from her about wedding themes, guest lists, and floral arrangements that sounded more like corporate negotiations than romantic planning. Nathan, ever the peacekeeper, tried to keep up. I could hear the exhaustion in his voice every time he called me. "Dad," he said over the phone, "Ava wants to move the engagement dinner to the Harbor Grand instead of that place we talked about." The Harbor Grand? I asked. Isn't that the one where senators and CEOs host fundraisers? Yeah, he sighed. She says it'll set the tone. Her parents already booked a private ballroom. Paid for by. I think her dad's company is covering it. She said something about publicity opportunities. Publicity, I repeated slowly. For a wedding dinner. He chuckled nervously. Yeah, it sounds ridiculous, but she says the right people will be there. It's how her family does things. It always is, I thought. When the day of the dinner arrived, I chose to drive myself my own '09 Buick, polished as much as possible, though next to the parade of luxury cars at the Grand's valet line, it looked like a time traveler from a humbler decade. The valet's expression told me as much. Inside, the ballroom glittered with gold accents and chandeliers, the kind that dripped crystal like frozen rain. Waiters floated past carrying champagne flutes that probably cost more than most people's weekly groceries. And in the center of it all stood Ava, radiant in a silver gown, greeting guests as if she were royalty hosting a coronation. Nathan stood beside her, smiling, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the kind of strain that comes from trying too hard to fit in. When she saw me, Ava's eyes brightened with a practiced warmth. Mr. Donovan, she said, taking my hand. I'm so glad you could make it. Nathan's told everyone you're the backbone of his family. Is that what he calls me? I said, smiling. She laughed and motioned toward a circle of guests. Come meet some of our friends. They've heard so much about you. Her friends turned out to be her father's business partners, an investor from Providence, and a woman who owned a luxury PR firm. Every handshake was the same firm, assessing, just a shade too polite. I could tell they already had a picture of who I was in their minds, a small-town banker, middle class, useful perhaps, but not important. So you work in banking? One of them asked. Yes, I said. Been doing it most of my life. Ah, the investor said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Community lending. That's admirable. There's always a need for local support. I nodded. Always. They chuckled like they'd just complimented me. Ava, meanwhile, was scanning the room, counting faces, judging attention. She leaned in toward me and whispered, "Try to enjoy yourself tonight, Mr. Donovan. We're all family now." Family. The word tasted wrong coming from her. Halfway through dinner, a friend of hers, a young man with slick back hair and too much cologne, raised his glass and said loudly, "So, Mr. Donovan, rumor has it your son married up, huh?" Laughter rippled through the table. Ava laughed too, though I noticed she didn't disagree. Nathan's face flushed. That's not funny, Trevor. Oh, come on, the man said, still grinning. We're just saying Ava's a catch. You Donovans got lucky. More laughter. Ava covered her mouth in mock modesty. Be nice, Trevor, she said sweetly. They're doing the best they can. The room erupted again. I smiled politely, even as my hands tightened around my glass. You know, I said quietly once the noise died down, luck is a funny thing. It tends to change hands. Ava blinked, unsure whether to laugh or take it as a warning. She chose laughter. You have such a sense of humor, Mr. Donovan. The rest of the night was a blur of subtle insults, jokes about small banks, simple traditions, and old-fashioned values. Every word sharpened like a blade. Nathan sat in silence, visibly shrinking beside her. When dessert came, Ava stood to give a short toast. Her voice was clear, confident, dripping with charm. I just want to thank everyone for being here, she began. This union isn't just about two people. It's about two families coming together, the Whitmores and the Donovans joining old money and new ambition. Old money and new ambition. People applauded. I didn't. And of course, she continued, glancing at me, we're so grateful for Mr. Donovan's generosity in helping make this possible. Nathan's told me you've agreed to contribute to the wedding. It means the world to us. Every eye in the room turned to me. Nathan's jaw dropped. Ava. She beamed. Oh, sweetheart, it's fine. Everyone should know how supportive your father is. There it was. The trap. A public promise I hadn't made. I rose slowly, letting the murmurs settle. I appreciate your kind words, I said evenly. And you're right, weddings are about families coming together. But I've always believed the most valuable investment isn't in a party, it's in the people attending it. A polite chuckle rolled through the crowd, unsure whether to take it as praise or something else. Ava's smile stiffened slightly. After the toast, Nathan pulled me aside. Dad, I swear I didn't know she'd say that. I know, I said softly. The question is, does she? He frowned. What do you mean? Never mind, son. Just enjoy the night. But I wasn't enjoying anything. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from Isabella. Audit complete. You'll want to see this first thing Monday morning. Character clause violations confirmed. I looked back at Ava, now laughing at something her mother had said, and felt a calm certainty settle over me. She thought tonight had humiliated me. She had no idea the real show was just beginning. Monday morning arrived with a cold rain tapping against my office window, the kind that makes the city look washed out and uncertain. But I wasn't uncertain about anything. The report from Isabella sat on my desk, thick as a case file and twice as damning. Across the top, stamped in bold, confidential character clause violation review, Whitmore family accounts. Inside were details only a banker could appreciate: falsified income statements, inflated collateral valuations, and a trail of luxury purchases that would make any compliance officer twitch. The Whitmores had built their image like a mansion made of glass, polished, gleaming, but fragile enough to shatter with one wrong touch. At exactly 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. Nathan's name flashed across the screen. Dad, can you come by Ava's parents' place tonight? They want to talk. It's about the wedding and the deposit. I leaned back, the faintest smile tugging at my lips. Of course, son. I'll be there. That evening, I drove to the Whitmores' estate, a sprawling Newport property with white columns, manicured hedges, and a kind of driveway that curves just to show off. A valet in a tailored coat opened my car door with a look that screamed, "You don't belong here." Inside, the family was waiting in a marble-floored sitting room. Charles Whitmore, tall and silver-haired, extended a hand that felt like a test. Beside him stood Margaret, wrapped in pearls, her perfume heavy enough to declare status before she spoke. Ava sat on the couch, her legs crossed neatly, her smile strained. Mr. Donovan, Charles said smoothly, thank you for coming. Please, sit. I did. I'll get straight to the point, he continued. Ava tells me there's been some hesitation about the wedding contribution. Hesitation? I said lightly. That's an interesting word for it. Charles smiled like a man used to negotiating from the high ground. I understand finances can be complicated. But surely, with your background in banking, you know the importance of maintaining appearances. A wedding like this benefits everyone involved: reputation, connections, opportunity. And you think $100,000 buys that? It buys assurance, he said, steepling his fingers. It shows good faith between our families. You're an intelligent man, Mr. Donovan. You know perception is everything. Ava leaned forward. It's not just about money, Mr. Donovan. It's about respect. My parents' friends expect a certain standard. It would be embarrassing if the groom's family didn't contribute appropriately. I studied her face. There wasn't an ounce of shame in her voice, only calculation. Nathan, sitting quietly beside her, looked miserable. Dad, I told them we shouldn't. Charles raised a hand. Son, this is a family matter. Let the adults handle it. I turned slowly toward him. Careful, Mr. Whitmore. The last man who told me to let the adults handle things ended up owing me 7 figures. He blinked, uncertain whether I was joking. Margaret interjected smoothly, Mr. Donovan, perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot. You've raised a fine son. He's marrying into a respected family. Surely we can agree it's best to avoid unnecessary tension. Unnecessary tension, I repeated, my voice calm. Is that what you call it when your daughter publicly announces that I've agreed to pay her $100,000 I never promised? Ava's eyes widened, just slightly. It was a misunderstanding. No, I said, cutting her off. It was a performance. And you played your part perfectly. The room went silent except for the faint tick of a grandfather clock. Charles cleared his throat. Mr. Donovan, I think we're losing focus here. The deadline for the venue deposit is tomorrow morning. Ava's mother and I are willing to extend the courtesy of covering your portion temporarily, but naturally, we'd expect repayment by the end of the month. Repayment, I repeated softly. That's generous of you. Consider it family cooperation, he said, smiling like a man sealing a deal. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a single envelope, thick with documents. In that case, I said, let me return the courtesy. Charles frowned. What's this? An updated statement from Donovan Financial Group regarding the status of Whitmore Holdings and your family's personal accounts. Margaret's pearl bracelet clinked as she adjusted her posture. Our accounts? Yes, I said. Your mortgage, credit lines, trust funds all under review. Ava laughed nervously. That's absurd. You can't just review our accounts because of a misunderstanding. I smiled. You're right. I can't review them because of a misunderstanding. I leaned forward. But I can because of a character clause violation. Charles's color drained. What the hell are you talking about? The fine print, I said. Section 9B of your mortgage agreement, Section 12A of your corporate loan, and the fiduciary ethics clause of Ava's trust fund, all of which specify that conduct inconsistent with the community and ethical values of Donovan Financial constitutes grounds for suspension or termination of account privileges. Margaret's voice trembled. You wouldn't dare. I already have. Ava stood abruptly. You can't do this. My trust fund has been frozen, I finished calmly. Pending review. The silence that followed was almost musical. Even the clock seemed to stop ticking. Nathan looked from me to Ava, confusion and shock written across his face. Dad, what are you saying? I'm saying, I replied evenly, that integrity isn't negotiable. And if someone uses money to measure worth, they shouldn't be surprised when money measures them back. Charles rose, his composure cracking. You can't threaten me in my own house. I'm not threatening you, I said, standing as well. I'm informing you. The investigation was triggered automatically after your daughter's public comments at the Harbor Grand. Our compliance department considered her statements discriminatory and reputationally damaging to the institution. The board agreed. Margaret gasped. The board? Oh yes, I said. We take our reputation very seriously. Ava's voice broke. You can't just erase our money like that. Erase? I smiled thinly. No. Just suspend access. You'll still have your accounts. You just won't be able to use them. Charles looked ready to explode. You'll regret this, Donovan. Possibly, I said, turning to leave. But not tonight. Nathan followed me to the door. Dad, wait, what's happening? Something overdue, I said quietly. Go home, son. Think hard about what kind of love demands a price tag. When I stepped back into the cold night, the rain had stopped. The Whitmore mansion stood behind me, glowing like a porcelain dollhouse, beautiful, delicate, and one storm away from cracking. In my pocket, my phone buzzed again, a message from Isabella. All systems confirmed. Whitmore accounts restricted. Next step. I typed back only 3 words. Let the silence spread. Because sometimes, silence is louder than revenge. It's the sound of power being reclaimed, dollar by dollar, truth by truth. By Tuesday morning, the storm had spread farther than I'd expected. When power shifts in silence, it travels fast. My phone buzzed at 7:14 a.m. The first of many calls. The name Charles Whitmore glowed on the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. Donovan. His voice was hoarse, desperate. What the hell have you done? None of our accounts are processing. My corporate line is frozen, my mortgage auto payments bounced, and my daughter's trust is under compliance review. I finished evenly. I told you that last night. You had no right. I had every right, I said calmly. Your signature gave me that right when you took my bank's money. You can't hold us hostage like this. Do you know who I am? Yes, I said. A man who should have read his contracts more carefully. Then I hung up. By 8 o'clock, the news had reached Ava. I was sitting in my office at Donovan Financial Headquarters, reviewing reports, when my assistant buzzed. Sir, there's a MS. Whitmore on line 1. She says it's urgent. I exhaled slowly. Put her through. Her voice came sharp and trembling. You've humiliated my family. My cards don't work, my accounts are frozen. How could you do this? Actions have consequences, Ava. You made yours public. I made mine legal. This is insane, she snapped. You're ruining our lives because I wanted a proper wedding. No, I said softly. I'm ruining the illusion that you could buy respect. Do you have any idea what this looks like? She hissed. People are talking. My father's investors are panicking. Do you really want to make enemies out of my family? I don't make enemies, I said, I make examples. There was a silence on the other end, followed by the faint sound of her catching her breath. You'll regret this, she whispered, her voice breaking. You can't just erase everything. I didn't erase it, I said. I revealed it. Then I hung up. By noon, the Whitmore situation had exploded across financial circles in Providence and Newport. Word spreads fast when a high society family suddenly loses liquidity. My compliance team sent hourly updates. 4 canceled events due to unpaid balances. 2 declined credit lines from partnering institutions. 1 revoked yacht insurance policy. All of it public record by the end of the day. Ava's glamorous world was shrinking in fast. At 4 p.m., my niece Isabella stepped into my office, carrying a folder and a knowing smile. You should see this, she said, sliding the report across the desk. Local media's picking it up. Whitmore Holdings under review for ethical lending violations. Their stock dropped 12% this afternoon. I flipped through the pages, scanning headlines. Newport family's assets frozen amid bank investigation. Another read, character clause enforcement strikes again. Good, I murmured. Also, Isabella added, Ava tried to withdraw cash from a secondary account this morning. Teller confirmed the freeze in front of 2 of her friends. It didn't go well. She made a scene. An unforgettable one, Isabella said with a faint grin. She screamed that we had no right, that her name meant something. Security had to escort her out. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. Names mean nothing without character. That evening, just before closing time, Nathan showed up at my office unannounced. He looked like he hadn't slept, eyes sunken, jaw tight. Dad, he said quietly. What did you do? I closed the file in front of me and gestured for him to sit. I told the truth. The Whitmores built their lives on lies. I just turned the lights on. He shook his head. Ava's devastated. She says her whole family's falling apart. Their business accounts are frozen, her father's screaming at lawyers. This isn't just revenge, it's destruction. She did it to herself, I said. She made a mistake, he shouted. She's not evil. Son, I said evenly, she tried to sell you a wedding like it was a product. She humiliated you and me in front of her guests. You call that a mistake? I call it a revelation. He slumped into the chair, rubbing his temples. You should have told me who you really are. Maybe she wouldn't have. Maybe she would have hidden it better, I interrupted. That's the thing about gold diggers, Nathan. They always polish what's fake. His eyes flickered with anger and shame. You didn't have to ruin them. I sighed. Maybe not. But I had to protect you. He looked away, jaw tightening. She said you enjoyed it. That you smiled when you froze her account. I didn't deny it. I smiled because I realized something, Nathan. She thought she was punishing a man beneath her. But in truth, she'd just picked a fight with the man who owned her world. Nathan stared at me for a long moment before standing. You always talk about respect and principle, Dad. But this? This feels like revenge. Sometimes, I said quietly, they're the same thing. He left without another word. That night, the Whitmore estate went dark. Literally. Utility payments bounced. The automatic gate stopped working. The staff walked out after paychecks failed to clear. By morning, photos of the once mighty mansion, now with a foreclosure notice taped to its gate, were circulating online. My phone buzzed again. It was a message from Ryan Mercer, our in-house counsel. Media requests pouring in. Do we comment? I typed back, no comment. Let the papers speak. Still, part of me felt the weight of it, not guilt exactly, but gravity. Power has a cost. Even justice leaves debris behind. Later that afternoon, Ava showed up in person. My receptionist's voice trembled through the intercom. Sir, she's here. She's crying. Send her in, I said. When she entered, she was almost unrecognizable, hair undone, makeup streaked, her once perfect composure shattered. Please, she said. You've made your point. I'm begging you, restore our accounts. My father's losing everything. I studied her, remembering the night she'd looked at my home like it was beneath her. And what are you losing, Ava? Her lip quivered. Everything I thought mattered. Good, I said. Now you can start finding what actually does. You're cruel, she whispered. No, I said softly. I'm honest. Cruelty is pretending money equals love. Honesty is showing what happens when it doesn't. She turned toward the door, her voice barely audible. Nathan will never forgive you. Maybe not, I said. But one day, he'll understand me. When she was gone, I looked out the window at the gray skyline and thought of my wife, Evelyn. She'd once told me that the hardest part of raising a child wasn't protecting them from danger, it was letting them see the truth about the world. Now, my son was seeing it in real time. And the Whitmores? They were finally seeing what happens when you treat character like a currency that never runs out. For the first time in decades, their accounts were empty, and so, I realized, were they. By Wednesday morning, the Whitmore collapse had evolved from a scandal into a spectacle. It was all over the business sections. Whitmore Holdings faces crisis after bank action, character clause enforcement shakes high society, trust fund heiress frozen out of fortune. But inside Donovan Financial, the atmosphere was calm. My employees didn't gossip, not because they lacked curiosity, but because they knew better than to underestimate what their boss was capable of when provoked. Still, my phone hadn't stopped ringing. lawyers, reporters. Even the mayor's office wanted clarification. I ignored most of them until my assistant knocked on my door. "Mr. Donovan," she said carefully, "your son's here. And he's not alone." My chest tightened a little. "Let them in." The door opened, and Nathan stepped in, his face pale, his jaw set, followed by Ava. She was wearing black, simple and understated. No jewelry, no designer bag. It was the first time I'd ever seen her without the mask of wealth. "Dad," Nathan started, "we need to talk." I motioned toward the two chairs across from my desk. "Then talk." Ava sat down slowly, her eyes red. Nathan placed a hand on hers, a gesture that told me he hadn't decided whose side he was on yet. "Mr. Donovan," Ava said quietly, "I came to apologize." I said nothing. She swallowed hard. "I said cruel things. I treated your family like something to be ashamed of. I was wrong." Nathan looked at me hopefully, as if waiting for me to accept her apology. I didn't. "You're not here just to apologize, Ava. You're here because your family's empire is burning, and you think I can stop the flames." Her eyes glistened. "You're right. I am here for that too. My father is ruined. The bank froze our assets, investors pulled out, the media is destroying us. He's sick, Mr. Donovan. He hasn't left his office in 2 days." "That's unfortunate," I said evenly. "But it's the result of his own conduct. You don't borrow from a man while mocking him at dinner." Nathan exhaled sharply. "Dad, please. This isn't helping." "Neither is pretending she's innocent," I said. "She's trying, can't you see that?" he snapped. "She came here to face you, not to beg." Ava looked down. "He's right. I'm not asking for you to fix everything. Just stop it from getting worse. Please." For a long moment, I said nothing. The only sound was the faint hum of the office air conditioning and the rain starting again outside the window. Then I leaned forward, folding my hands. "Ava, do you love my son?" She blinked, surprised by the question. "Yes. I do. Even if he were broke. Even if there were no money, no grand houses, no social circles to impress." Her voice cracked. "Yes. I didn't used to know what that kind of love was, but I do now." I studied her carefully. "You learned it after you lost everything." She nodded slowly. "Maybe that's the only way someone like me could." I turned to Nathan. "And you still want to marry her after everything that's happened?" He hesitated. "I don't know if I'll ever trust her the same way, but I still care about her. I can't just walk away from someone who's trying to be better." That answer, honest, conflicted, human, reminded me so much of his mother that I couldn't help but soften. I leaned back. "All right. I'll make you a deal." Ava looked up, startled. "A deal?" "Yes. You and your family signed contracts. You broke them not legally at first, but morally. I can't reverse that. But I can choose how harshly those consequences fall." She held her breath. "What do you mean?" "I'll authorize a partial restoration of access, limited funds for essential operations only. Your father can keep his business afloat, but the mansion, the yachts, the accounts, they stay frozen until the investigation clears." Her lips trembled. "That's more than I deserve." "Correct," I said. "But it's what my son deserves, a chance to see if you mean what you say." Nathan's voice broke. "Thank you, Dad." "Don't thank me," I said. "This isn't forgiveness. It's a test." I signed a single document and slid it across the desk. Ava took it with trembling hands. "Your family will receive notification by morning," I said. "The restrictions stand for 90 days. Use them wisely." She nodded, whispering, "I will." As they stood to leave, I stopped her with one final question. "Ava," I said softly, "do you remember what you told me that first night we met? That everything could be bought?" Her face turned pale. "Yes. Do you still believe that?" She shook her head. "No. Some things have to be earned." "Good," I said. "Then maybe you have a future after all." They left quietly. That night, as the rain hammered against the glass, I found myself standing in my office, staring out at the city lights reflecting off wet pavement. I should have felt satisfied. I'd won. The Whitmores were broken, and justice or something like it had been served. But instead, I felt something heavier. I walked to the portrait hanging on the far wall. Evelyn, my wife, smiling softly, her hand resting on a stack of loan papers from our first branch. I could almost hear her voice. "You always said power's not about what you can do," she would have told me. "It's about what you choose not to." I exhaled slowly. "Maybe you're right, Eve," I whispered. "Maybe I've done enough." My phone buzzed again. It was Isabella. "Press conference tomorrow. Reporters are asking if we'll clarify the character clause policy." I typed back, "We'll clarify it by example." When I looked back out the window, I saw the faint reflection of myself, an older man in a crisp suit, the weight of legacy on his shoulders. For years, I'd built a bank around one belief, that respect can't be loaned, only earned. But tonight, watching my son walk away with the woman who once mocked everything we stood for, I realized something even more powerful. Forgiveness, too, has interest. And like any good banker, I just set the terms. 3 weeks later, the world had already moved on. New scandals replaced the old, the Whitmores were keeping an uncharacteristically low profile, and my son had started showing up at the bank again, not as the owner's son, but as an analyst learning the business from the ground up. Nathan had insisted on it. "No more illusions," he'd said. "If I'm going to build a life, I want to build it from something real." I couldn't have been prouder. As for Ava, she had disappeared from the social pages entirely. The designer gowns and society galas were gone. The yacht club revoked her family membership quietly, and the mansion, stripped of staff and luxury, stood silent like a monument to misplaced pride. Then, one afternoon, she appeared again, not at a gala or on a gossip site, but in my office doorway. She looked different. Older, calmer, the sharp edges of her beauty softened by something deeper, humility, maybe. She was holding a manila folder and a cup of coffee. "For you," she said, placing it gently on my desk. I raised an eyebrow. "You brought me coffee?" She smiled faintly. "Your assistant said you drink it black." I figured it was safer than bringing champagne. I couldn't help a chuckle. "Fair. What's this?" I asked, nodding at the folder. "My resignation," she said. I frowned. "From what?" She exhaled. "My father's company. I've been running it for the last 2 weeks, cleaning up what's left, settling debts, selling assets. The rest doesn't belong to us anymore. Not after what we did." I opened the folder. Inside was a financial statement, handwritten, with notes in the margins. Ava's notes. She'd personally liquidated several properties to repay portions of the family's outstanding loans. At the bottom, a check was stapled, the first installment of repayment to Donovan Financial. $1.2 million, I said quietly. "That's not a small gesture." "It's not a gesture," she said. "It's responsibility." I studied her face, no makeup this time, no designer gloss. Just honesty. "I wanted to come here in person," she continued, "because I don't want you to think I'm doing this for Nathan. Or for appearances. I'm doing it because you were right. About everything." Her voice trembled slightly. "When you froze my accounts, I thought you were destroying me. But you were saving me from becoming everything my parents raised me to be." For the first time in my life, I understand what my name is worth. And it's not what's in a trust fund. I didn't speak right away. I'd faced billionaires, politicians, and fraudsters across that same desk, but this moment felt heavier than any negotiation. Finally, I said, "Ava, what you just did, that's how you earn back what money can't buy." She nodded, her eyes glassy. "I hope someday Nathan can see that too." "He already does," I said softly. "He told me he forgave you last week." Her breath caught. "He did?" "Yes. But forgiveness and trust aren't the same thing. You'll have to earn the second." "I know," she whispered. "And I will." Later that week, the board convened at Donovan Financial headquarters to review the Whitmore case officially. The decision was unanimous: the accounts would remain restricted until all obligations were fulfilled, but the Whitmores would be allowed to rebuild under strict supervision. When the meeting adjourned, Isabella approached me in the hallway. "You're really giving them another chance?" "I'm giving her another chance," I said. "Her father's finished." "But Ava, she's different now." Isabella smirked. "You're getting soft in your old age." I smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe I just remembered what your aunt used to say." "About forgiveness?" "About balance," I corrected. "Justice without compassion is cruelty. Compassion without justice is weakness. You need both if you're going to build something that lasts." 2 months passed. Nathan was thriving at the bank, running numbers like a man born for it. I'd see him at his desk sometimes, sleeves rolled up, eyes focused, no trace of the entitled kid who'd once apologized for his father's car. Ava, meanwhile, had found a new job, not in luxury marketing or event planning, but at a local nonprofit that helped immigrant families secure business loans. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. One Friday evening, as the sun set over Providence, Nathan invited me to dinner. "No surprises this time," he said with a grin. The restaurant wasn't fancy, a small Italian place on Federal Hill, the kind my wife used to love. As we sat down, I noticed Ava at the table already, wearing a simple blue dress and holding a bouquet of sunflowers. "Mr. Donovan," she said softly. I didn't want to come uninvited, but Nathan thought maybe we could all share a meal. I nodded. "Then let's eat." Dinner was quiet at first, but laughter came easier than I expected. Ava spoke about her new work, the families she'd helped, the young women she'd mentored. There was no pride in her tone, only gratitude. When dessert came, she looked at me across the table. "Mr. Donovan, I don't expect you to ever forget what I did. But I hope one day, you'll remember me for how I tried to make it right." I thought for a moment. "Ava," I said, "people like you and me, we spend our lives learning that wealth isn't measured in numbers. It's measured in what we build that outlasts us. You've started building something real. That's enough." She smiled, a real one, the kind that didn't need validation. Nathan raised his glass. "To lessons learned," he said. I raised mine. "And to character restored." A week later, the Providence Business Journal ran a headline that made me pause. "Whitmore heiress launches scholarship fund for working-class students, partnership with Donovan Financial announced." The article featured a picture of Ava and Nathan standing together, smiling in front of the old Federal Hill branch, the one Evelyn and I had opened decades ago. I felt something stir in my chest that I hadn't felt in a long time, pride mixed with peace. Later that evening, I sat in my study with Duke asleep at my feet, flipping through the framed photo of Evelyn on the wall. "You'd have liked her now," I murmured. "Took a storm to humble her, but she learned." Outside, the city lights flickered on one by one, like tiny beacons of second chances. For years, I believed the greatest wealth was control. But watching my son and his fiancée rebuild their lives with humility, I finally understood what Evelyn had always tried to teach me, that real legacy isn't power or fortune. It's the strength to do the right thing when pride begs you not to. As I closed the office that night, I wrote a short memo for the next board meeting. The subject line read, Character Clause Revision Addendum Proposal. And below it, just one line. Because sometimes, redemption deserves as much room in a contract as consequence. Then I turned off the lights, stepped into the cool night air, and smiled knowing that, for the first time in a long while, the balance sheet of my life finally made sense.